G'day. So I just wanted to do a couple of quick videos to show you some tips about how to improve your casting. Now, I'm assuming that you have already cast a fly rod before, that you're not an absolute beginner. If you're an absolute beginner and this is your first time you've ever cast a fly rod, this probably isn't the video for you. But let's say you've had a fly rod in your hand, you've picked it up, you've cast it a little bit, and you'd like to learn how to be a little bit better. So I wanted to tell you a couple of things that really helped me. Now, when I first learned fly casting, I was on a long flight back from Europe to Australia, and I was reading a book on the plane, and without even having a fly rod in my hand, just thinking about the physics of casting and visualizing it really helped me to understand what I needed to do. And, you know, one of the things that I notice when I look at fly casting videos, especially of really good fly casters, is it's very hard to tell exactly what they're doing because the motion looks very smooth and fluid and the casting stroke just looks like a single motion. But there's actually a little bit more than that going on. So one of the best ways to do this is to actually practice the casting motion without a fly rod in your hand. And that's great because you can practice it anywhere, anytime, at home, on the bus, in the car, whatever. Okay, so just thinking about the casting stroke, the first tip that I've got for you is that you want your cast to be in a straight line. So the plane of the rod and your casting hand wants to travel in a straight line, both in a forward and back direction, like that, and also in a vertical plane, like that. So you don't want to be casting in an arc like that because that's going to make a big wide loop and it's not going to be very effective. You want to have your rod hand traveling in a straight line back and forward in that plane and also in that plane. So that's the first thing. Now, in your casting stroke, it might look like when a caster is casting that they're just going back and forward like that, but there's more than that going on. What's really happening is there's two parts to the cast in both directions. First of all, there's the loading the rod, which is simply making sure that the line is straight and the rod is carrying the weight of the line. And the most important part of the cast is the stop at the end. And it's the same on the forward cast. It's pulling the line forward, loading it up, making sure that it's there, and then the stop at the end. And it's actually the stop at the end of the cast that makes the biggest difference. So when I do the stop, I like to think of, if you watch my wrist here, I like to think of the rod leaning forward like that, coming back to slowly, and then at the stop, you're turning over the rod, and that's where you're really making the tip of the rod flick. That's what creates your loop and creates the power. And on the forward cast, same thing, pulling the line forward, making sure that it's all tight, and then stop with a little flick at the end. So if you do this with a rod in your hand, it should look something like this. Loading the line, stop, and that's where you deliver. And forward cast, loading the line, stop, and that's where you deliver. Now, you need to stop it quite firmly. So when I'm doing that stop, I'm actually stopping quite hard. If you just do a lazy sort of a stop like that, you're not going to have a very effective cast. It's all about how precisely you stop. Okay? So when you're casting short, you'll have a fairly short sort of casting stroke like that. As you go longer, you'll have a longer casting stroke like that. But just make sure that you've got a nice sharp stop. The trick is start slow, finish fast. Start slow, finish fast. So stop, stop. And again, without the rod, stop, stop. Just like that. So that's the first tip. The second tip, and this is the one that will really make the difference between being able to do what I call a trout cast, which is where you're really just casting with one hand and using the rod to do all the work. When you want to progress to the next level of casting and really be able to deal with wind or to cover the distance more effectively, what you need to be able to do is use your other hand, your line hand, to help generate line speed. This is what's called hauling. Now, when people start doing this and they get it wrong, it really falls apart. This is what can sometimes happen when people realize that they can use their line hand to pull on the line. Say on the back cast, they come back like this, and then they haul, and their line comes down like that on the back cast. But then what happens when they go forward with the forward cast, their line hand down here has got nothing to do. And the worst part of that is if you bring the line hand back up when you cast forward, you're releasing all of the tension from the line. So the trick in learning how to haul properly, what's called the double haul, is that you have to remember to bring your line hand back up to the rod after you cast. It's easy to remember to do the haul, but it's hard to remember to bring your hand back up again. That's the trick. So I'll show you this without the rod first of all. Imagine that your two hands are together up here. This hand is holding the rod, this hand is holding your line. So when you come forward, you know how you do that flick at the end that we talked about and the sharp stop? You want your haul to be coming at the same time as that flick. So you're coming forward, coming forward, coming forward. As you turn over here and stop, that's when your haul happens at the same time. And then, before you start your back cast, you bring your line back up because you're feeding line out here. So then, when your back cast starts, you're coming back again, back again, back again, back again, and when you get to the end and you're going to do your stop, that's when you haul at the same time there. If you haul too early during the cast here, then you're going to cast tailing loops. It's going to cause all sorts of problems. You want the flick to be timed with the haul together. Now, as I said, the hard part of this to remember is to bring your hand back up again, because this hand is doing one motion there, but your line hand is doing two motions. So what's the line hand here? You're coming back, down, up, and you're coming forward, down, up. So what I found helpful when I was first learning this was to focus on remembering to bring your hand back up again after you haul. Once you've got your hand in the right position, it's easy to remember to do the haul. What's hard to remember is to get into the right position in the first place. So, when coming forward, haul and back up. Coming back, haul and back up. So, if you're having trouble with this, focus on bringing the hand back up. Forget the other bits and focus on bringing your hand back up after you haul. Once you've got that, then you're in the right position and you're set up, and the rest of it can come easily. So I hope that helps you. I would say it's always a good idea to go and get a casting lesson or two with a good instructor. They can look at what you're doing in your cast and very quickly analyse what the problem is and put you on the right track. But it's not always necessary to be able to get out on the water or even to the park to improve your casting. You can improve your casting just by thinking about it, by understanding it, and by visualising. So I hope that helps, and see you next time.